is your host, it's Annie Talks.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Annie Talks, where we bring to you interesting stories about interesting people that you want to know about. I'm your host, Annie Rivera. Thank you for tuning in, and to those who have already subscribed. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. And if so, I personally invite you to subscribe. Annie Talks is brought to you by Luxwear Trends, affordable, luxurious timepieces for every occasion, luxury that lasts forever, and that's what sets us apart from others. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit luxweartrends.com. That's Luxe weartrends.com. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Annie Talks podcast. I'm your host, Annie Rivera. I am thrilled that you've tuned into the show. So by the time you hear this episode, it will be October 1st, 2018. And earlier today, I was reflecting on how far this podcast has come. It was in October 2017 that we launched our very first episode of Annie Talks. And here we are now, episode 46. Amazing. What a thrill it has been. And I want to thank all the past guests who have been on this podcast. You are all amazing, and I am so thankful to you for sharing your stories. I especially want to thank all the awesome listeners for tuning in week after week. I am working up some awesome ideas for a 1-year anniversary, so perhaps a swag giveaway. So be on the lookout for an upcoming announcement in the episodes to come. So for this episode, I had the wonderful pleasure of speaking with Annett Bone. She is the creator and host of the Dancepreneuring Studio podcast, which is located here in the Los Angeles area. In this episode, Annett talks about what it was like to live in a biracial household, being half Korean and half Chamorro. She also talks about returning to her first love of dance after a 20-plus year hiatus. It was during that 20-year hiatus that Annett experienced struggles with depression, massive weight gain, and abusive mentorship relationships. She will share how she bounced back from that and how she began living her successful entrepreneurial lifestyle. So, without further delay, here now is my conversation with Annett Bone. Hi, Annett. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really, truly appreciate it.
I'm so excited to be on your show, Annie. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yay! So let's jump right in. Why don't you tell us, give a sense of who you are, what your background is. I know that you're a dancer, choreographer, and creator and host of the Dancepreneuring Studio. So why don't you talk about that and segue into how you got started with that?
I'm a podcaster. As you announced, I have the Dancepreneuring Studio podcast. I'm also a creative strategist, dancer, and speaker. I consider my hometown California now, but before that, I lived on Guam. I've also lived in Texas and Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And with dance, I started with hula and Tahitian when I was 8. I started technical jazz and ballet classes at 14 when I was on Guam. There wasn't a lot available. And with schooling, I went to a private Catholic school on Guam during my middle school years. And then for high school, I went to a private Catholic all-girls school. So that was interesting. And then when I left Guam, I went to UC Irvine and got my bachelor's in dance with an emphasis in teaching. Funny thing is I quit dance after I graduated from college, and I did different jobs. My last one being writing insurance for nonprofit groups and also insurance for anesthesiologists. So it was very niche. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting. And I learned quite a bit because I never thought I'd be doing the jobs that I did. And then during that time as well, I also I was involved in a direct selling business. And then I transitioned to the online space in about 2012 by learning how to build WordPress websites and doing social media marketing and management for entrepreneurs and small-sized companies. I returned to dance in 2014, and then I launched my podcast, the Dancepreneuring Studio, in January of 2015. So that's it in a nutshell, sort of.
That's so awesome. I'm so happy to hear just how you came about the Dancepreneuring Studio, and how you came about here in Southern California. It's near and dear to my heart, especially. So now I read your bio that you're half Korean and half Chamorro. So can you talk about what it was like in your childhood and your upbringing? Do you identify with one ethnicity versus the other, or do you equally identify with both?
I identify with both depending on the situation, and I'll explain that as we go along with my childhood and upbringing, as you had asked. I was born in Incheon, South Korea. My mother's Korean. My dad is Chamorro. He's from a little island called Rota that's near Guam. They're part of the Marianas Islands chain. And I would say the majority of people, when I tell them I'm Chamorro, they have no idea what I'm talking about, because a lot of people, Chamorro people, will say I'm Guamanian or I'm from Guam if they've lived on Guam or they have family on Guam. And anybody can be Guamanian. If you live on Guam, you're Guamanian. Just like if you live in the U.S., you're American, right?
Right.
But you could have a Turkish background or Italian or whatever. So I say Chamorro because that is truly who I am. That's my father's ethnic cultural background. And I don't mind explaining that, but I say that it depends on the situation, because if I tell someone, especially like when I go to a Korean grocery store, or if I'm around Koreans and they find out I'm half Korean, they treat me differently. It's very, it's very interesting. They treat me, I don't want to say they're nicer to me, but they're pleasantly surprised, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But they don't know what Chamorro is. So then I talk more about my Korean side because that's what they identify with. So I tailor it, I guess you would say, to the situation based on what people can relate to, because I want them to feel comfortable, because the whole culture thing, as we were talking about previously, can be kind of a touchy subject, right?
Yeah.
So, it just depends on the situation. And my dad was in the military, so he and my mom met in Korea. He went off to Vietnam. I grew up in a very strict household, being of the Catholic faith at that time. I identified very much so against, I don't want to say against my will, because as a child, obviously you don't have a choice, right? But I'm the oldest of three girls. And so I had a lot of expectations. And I think also the whole thing with Asian families, there's a lot of expectations, and especially on the old, at least in the Korean culture, there's a lot of, and I think with every culture, there's some kind of, I don't know, it's very interesting. And so I had a lot of pressure to be certain ways, and I felt like it was never good enough. And I was told a lot of times that I want to say with parents and stuff, that people mean well, and as a parent, you only know what you know going through what you go through, and it doesn't come with a manual. You try to read all these books and think that you're going to be a certain way, and then when you're finally in the situation, it's not by the book, it's not textbook, it's not black and white, where and it's so easy to judge. Like, I remember before I had my son, I thought, okay, when I'm a parent, I'm going to do it this way, and I'm not going to do what my parents did. And then I'm finding, oh boy, I spoke too soon, foot in mouth, and everybody's situation's different. So, like we were talking about different podcast episodes, there'd be a whole podcast episode on parenting itself. Yeah,
no kidding. I mean, I think we all grew up that way. I'm Filipino background, and so we definitely, had the whole cultural exposure. Yes, this is how we do it. This is this is where we go to church. This is how we do it. And then, even the Filipino and the food, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and I guess you're a product of your environment, right? Because if you're not there, if you're not in, living in the country that your origin is, you can only be who you are based on where you are. You know what I mean? So if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. And I know you can identify with a lot of the things I said, Annie. So
yes, for sure. Yeah, we have so much in common. I already know. So it's good to know that because you are mixed race, that you can bring the best of both worlds to molding and shaping the person that you are today. So. I think we should celebrate, and it's something to celebrate. So I think you are, well, first of all, I always love to talk with women entrepreneurs, because we need a we need to help each other, definitely. And I also want to make sure that, people of color, you and I, for instance, we're not handed things. We don't have, silver spoon in our mouths. And sometimes we just have to hustle and make things work, and bringing the best of both worlds. In your case, the best of one world for me, and then just making it work and getting along and being coexist with other people and other races and whatnot. Here, especially in California, I think it's very, very important.
Yes, I agree with what you said. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it is I love how you said about bringing the best of both worlds with your background. And I feel like that if you honor where you come from, now, not everything is perfect from like your upbringing and that stuff. And it took me a long time to realize, okay, I had these things like other people that weren't ideal, but I don't have to focus on that. And I can focus on the good that I learned from both sides of my cultural background. And so I do appreciate that now, being older. Before, it was like, gosh, why did I have to grow up like that? Like, such a victim mentality, which just permeated so much of my life for so many years, until I decided that no, I can't play the victim anymore. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
No, I'm so glad that we were both, on the same page with that, because I think more and more people of color need to embrace that and really kind of work it to your advantage. And,
yes.
And keep moving forward and never really looking behind. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So you also mentioned in your bio about returning to dance after a 20-year hiatus. And during that time, you went through struggles, including depression. You talked a little bit about massive weight gain and abusive mentorship relationships. So are you comfortable with talking about that? Can you tell us what that was and what that looked like to you, and most importantly, how were you able to overcome that?
Yes, I am comfortable talking about it in a positive light. I don't want to bash anything or anyone. And that's my whole thing, is when I talk about struggles and things, and I really want to focus on the positive that I got out of it, more so than, because it's so easy to go there and complain, right?
Yeah.
That this didn't work and this didn't work and woe is me. And that's what I was there, Annie, like, not too long ago of, well, why did this happen to me? And why did this person get this and I didn't get this? And it was always this comparison game. But during the 20 years that I was not dancing after I got my degree, it was a lot due to self-image issues that I've struggled with pretty much my whole life, and comparing and not feeling like I was enough. And we hear this a lot now. People are talking a lot more about this, which is great, because you realize, oh, I'm not the only one that felt this or went through this. And not that you need outside validation, but you realize that your feelings are your feelings for a reason. They are fickle and they can change, and they don't need to be the end all be all of what your life is going to be like, and you don't have to wallow in them, but there is importance in acknowledging them. And so I was at a point where I was feeling all these things of self-doubt, regrets, and lots of depression because of that, because I had given up on myself. I didn't give myself a chance. And I thought, gosh, I really thought I was more than this. I'd be like, I thought I'd be farther along now. I thought that I had something. I thought that I was intelligent enough to figure this out and that I wouldn't fail. And here I am and doing these jobs that I feel like I'm downplaying my strengths and having to just be something or someone that I'm not. And then I found this business model as I was going toward the end of college, because I was getting a lot of pressure from my family of, well, why do you want to dance? Because there's no money in it, and you're not going to do well, and why are you? Oh gosh, all these questions that came up, and these very hurtful statements, and just not because they were trying to hurt me, but because of your family says things, trying to help, thinking they're helping you, but really it's hurting your spirit.
Yeah.
And so I felt guilt. I always put guilt on myself anyway, just because of how I grew up. And I chose to, I realize now, okay, I didn't have to take that. But when you're young, you just kind of take everything in, and you allow a lot of external things to affect you internally. And you can't, if you don't have the right mentorship, or you're not involved in self-development and positive mindset, it's very easy to get stuck in what people say, what people don't say, how people act, react, etc. Right?
Right.
And so when I discovered this business model, I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is my savior. I'm going to make tons of money. I'm going to have people that are going to encourage me and love me. And oh my goodness, this is going to make my dreams come true, because that's the way it was presented.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always interested in the whole entrepreneurial thing, because my dad's family owned a retail store in Guam for many years. And I had I found out later on that my grandfather, his dad, actually, to survive at that time, he sold candy door to door to support his family and their huge family, which I would have loved to learn more about that, what he did, what his mindset was, because he did whatever it took to support his family at that time. But the thing is, when I was growing up and even watching what was going on in the store and what they did, it was a lot of hard work and long hours, but they never taught me what it means to own your business. They just subscribe to the fact that because this is so hard, you want to go to school, get a good education, get a good job. You know the whole story, you know, that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I thought. And then when I told them, you know, I want to be a dancer, but I want to study dance in an academic setting. And then also in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, if this dance thing doesn't work out, then I have I thought, a college degree would be it too. At least I have something, right?
Right. Something to fall back on. Yeah.
I can fall back on. And so again, that was kind of a little bit of a quote unquote security move, because of the whole, I'm going to fall back. But that college thing, that's a whole nother discussion as well.
Oh my
Learn, right? So this business model, I really thought that this was going to be the answer, but what it turned out as I was going along is, okay, this business is great for people that might want a business in a box, that are still kind of the employee mindset and need people to validate them based on performance. Now, everything, of course, is based on performance. There's this give and take. There's this reciprocity that happens between a client and a business owner. And, that that is understood. But what it turned out to be is, if you don't do this or buy these things that help my business go forward, then you're really not worth spending time with, or you're not valuable enough. Or if you don't have this kind of goal, or it's not your goal to have more, then you're really not that great of an entrepreneur of a person. So you need to be like me. It was more like molding you so that you be like the leader or the mentor. And I thought that, I had this little glimmer of hope. And it's amazing to me with hope, like you just need a very little bit to get you going. And I was so hungry for mentorship and for positivity and that kind of thing, because I knew I had so much to work on internally in terms of, I need to get out of this negative mindset and of feeling like a victim and giving up and all these things. And I thought this business was the answer. But as I've explained a little bit here, that it was a very warped way of going about that. But I thought that was the way to go, because I was so hungry for the positive part of it, if that makes sense. And so I did whatever I had to do to be in the good graces of these people. And even that wasn't enough, because I didn't really achieve much in it, quite frankly. I didn't get to the levels that they were at or they were talking about. And I didn't know how to really make it work for me. And so I became very depressed. I ate a lot. I took comfort in food. I thought, okay, I'm not dancing anymore. I'm not exercising. I'll let my body go, because really, who cares? I mean, I'll get back to it later. It was a lot of me making the choices. I don't blame them per se. And I talk about this a lot, where it's not, I'm not blaming. And I already know that I was very much a victim thinker, that, I didn't have this, and this, so that's why I'm not successful in whatever. Right. And so, that was a long time of processing. And so food became very comfortable, and it was a place where I could hide, and that satisfied a very temporary and very, it satisfied a very temporary need at a very temporary time, where circumstances were, I felt uncontrollable, but really they were, because it was my choice. I could have made the choice
Sure.
to think differently and create different circumstances so I could move forward. But I didn't choose to do that because I was so stuck in the negative mindset. So when I discovered the online space in 2012, that's when things really started opening up for me, because I thought, wait a minute, I don't have to subscribe to what these people say. Like, I'm actually valuable the way I am, and I can change what I want to change. And just because I'm not part of this business model, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be successful. Like, because there was a lot of it was a lot of fear-based marketing, a lot of manipulation in terms of, okay, if you don't stay in this business model, or the people that leave, their life is not going to be as prosperous as ours. And there's something wrong if they leave, and it shows a character defect on their part. And I thought, that's kind of, inside I knew, I thought that's kind of a lot to assume about someone's life when you don't live their life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, let me touch a little bit on that. I always feel as though, yeah, you're right. When you're trying to follow somebody else's business model, that they want you to be a cookie cutter of them, and that's not the case, because you have your own characteristics and the way in which you can reach out to your target audience or your target market, whatever it may be, and you bring the personality and in marketing, as you know, in marketing and public relations, we have to build that trust, right? We have to build that relationship. So we can't be a cookie cutter for somebody else, especially if we're trying to make that business our own. So I get that. I get what you're trying to say. And believe me, I was, victim of that as well. So now what was that actual aha moment for you? Well, you said that in 2012, the online space. Tell us a little bit about that. What was that actual aha moment that made you turn around and decide, okay, this is it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was already feeling like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You have these moments in time like, okay, am I supposed to be doing this? And what I discovered, Annie, is that I was ignoring my internal compass for the longest time already, because there were already things and statements and activities that I was involved in within this particular business model, and things said that I thought, I don't know if I subscribe to that, but if that's what they say to be successful, then okay, I'm going to do it, because I was always stubborn anyway. Like, I want to make this work. Okay.
Yeah.
Even no matter what, I'm going to be stubborn about it. And that can be good and that can be bad. Obviously it wasn't so good because I was doing the wrong things. You can be stubborn and be tenacious about the wrong things. And that's what I discovered. So when I started building WordPress websites in 2012, without even having knowledge, really, a mentor of mine that I met by accident, she just told me what to do. And she said, you need to do this. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about that, but okay, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my whole life. Okay, if I don't know it, then I'm going to figure out a way to do it. Even if it's not perfect, I need to find out a way to make it work. And so as I was discovering this and about social media and marketing, and wow, you can actually be yourself and you can work with the people you want to work with, and you can have a voice and you don't have to subscribe to one way of thinking. That's what opened it up for me. And I thought, I don't need to have people tell me what I am or what I'm not. And
yeah, you don't need those people validating who you are based on who they think that you are. You need to, right. Oh my goodness. Wow. I just got goosebumps. Wow. That's so awesome. Now WordPress. So you build websites then or
not anymore?
Oh, not anymore. Okay.
No, because as we were talking about the whole client work, brought back memories of clients that I worked with, and people don't realize that WordPress is a very user-friendly platform, just like Squarespace and some other platforms that are available. Yeah, those are all very easy to use, but when you say, when a client comes to you and said, I want to build a website, and they have no idea, oh my gosh, there's so much more when it comes to a service-based business that people don't realize. And it taught me a lot about communication and how to be more clear in areas that I need to be more clear in, the way in processes and that kind of thing. And it was mentally draining, so I don't do it anymore. I do a little bit of consulting for very few. I have to really want to work with the person or the business for me to do it. But I stopped. But it was such a great pivotal point for me to start, though, because I thought, I have so many resources available to me, free and paid, that I didn't have a lot of money to invest to learn stuff. So I figured it out as I went along. And so I'm so thankful for that experience. And even now, everything is a learning experience. Everything is an experiment, and you learn and you adjust. And I'm finally at the point where I'm okay that, things don't have to totally make sense as long as I'm honoring what's going on inside and, making decisions as best as I know how without feeling guilty or feeling pressured by people trying to fit into what they think I should be, like what I did for those 20 years where I wasn't dancing. And also that thing too with the business model, like give up what you love now so you can do it more later. Yeah, I kind of get that. But for me, giving up dance, not even being like kind of watching it from the outside was so painful for me. It was, I felt like I was, and I say this when I talk about this depending on where I'm at, it really felt like I was dying inside, like I was dying a slow death, but I was ignoring it. So,
well, I think, okay, so in your case, and most people too, who are, kind of stuck in that stronghold of, where you don't want to be, the space where you don't want to be because it's killing you inside, basically. So something needed to give and something needed to happen. And in this case, WordPress was kind of the way out, and it got you through, a temporary, situation, and it opened up some doors for you to create the Dancepreneur Studio, right? So can you segue into that? Can you talk about how that came about, the inspiration for creating that, and from leaving that business model to going into the Dancepreneur Studio podcast, and then how you returned back into dancing, and that's because that was your love, that was your passion. So what inspired you to get back to dancing?
I was tired of giving up on myself, Annie. I was tired of having regrets. And so it was a culmination. I didn't have one aha moment. I felt like I had culminations of moments leading up to this chance event. I don't call it event. I guess it's kind of an event of going into a shaved ice place in Torrance of all places. I'm not familiar with that area, right? And I went into this, and of course being from an island and living in Hawaii and loving shaved ice and all that. And shaved ice is different in Hawaii than it is, like they call it snow cones here, right? It's different. Yeah. The ice is different. The texture.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my gosh, an actual island, ice place, shaved ice place. And so I saw an ad for a dance studio down the street that I had no idea existed. And it said all ages, all levels. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to go there. I've been wanting to get back to dance, at least just to get my body healthy again, because there was a point where I thought, when I was climbing up just a really simple flight of steps, and I was breathless after, and I thought, I am too young to be breathless out of these darn little steps. This is not good. This is just not good. Right. And like weird things like sitting in the driver's seat and the seat belt cutting into my stomach because I was not healthy, it was getting, and I've always been not always, but I've been health conscious, like on and off throughout the years, but for very cosmetic aesthetic reasons, as opposed to like now for me, it's all about function and foundation and how I'm feeling internally and health wise. It's such a different perspective, and that changed everything for me. So seeing that ad, getting involved in that studio, just throwing myself back into it. I miss the process of being in something creative that I love so much. I missed feeling healthy.
Oh, yeah.
And then with podcasting, I never, ever, ever thought that I'd be a podcaster because, first of all, I hated the sound of my voice. I hated the sound. I didn't think that I could do it, the doubts. But then going back into dance just opened up these doors for me in terms of my internal self growth because of pushing myself. And so I thought, wait a minute, what if I can put dance on a different platform that's not visual? And I can have conversation about something I love so much and bring people on that are in the dance world and give them a different voice to express besides the obvious, which is visual, right?
Right.
And what if I can promote dance and entrepreneurs in dance in a different way? Let's see if I can do this, because I'm all about getting out of, as I've been dancing and going through all this, let me get out of my comfort zone because I don't want to have any more regrets.
Right.
Okay, so if it doesn't work out, okay, great. I would say 95% of the things that I've done since I started dancing again, they haven't worked. Whether it's an audition or a project or something, they haven't had the fruition that I thought they would have. But I'm at a different point in my life and a different mindset. I'm not choosing to be a victim, like, oh my gosh, it didn't work out, woe is me, which I did before, which is why I quit before, because I could not handle rejection. So now it's like, okay,
yep,
it's uncomfortable, bring it on. I'm there. Let's see what I can do with this. Whether it works or not, that's not the point. It's
right.
I need to feel, I've spent so much time berating myself, and I can't waste any more time and have any more regrets. So that's what it was all about. It was just about getting out of my comfort zone, doing another experiment, having another experience, which is why the Dancepreneuring Studio podcast started.
That is so awesome. Oh my gosh. I have similar, I don't like to make these podcasts about me or anything. I always want to make sure that, we feature you, but, gosh, that's the same exact scenario. I thought to myself,
gosh.
Honestly, I was thinking, because, I have a degree in public relations, a master's degree in communications, and I have a minor in radio, TV, film. But for the life of me, the broadcasting part of me always wanted to pursue more. I knew that there was something I've always wanted to do. And I don't know if you remember way back when, watching a PBS special with Huell Hauser. He was the Golden Coast guy that would go up and down the coast and basically talk like at Folsom Prison or the Hearst Castle, and he would just go around with a microphone in his hand and walk the streets, and everybody knew him as Huell. It was kind of interesting, and he was like my mentor. Even though I never ever met him, I just thought, I want to be like Huell, and hence that's how my YouTube channel started. So I was thinking, well, I could do more of that, and I could do more of this, and then, gosh, somehow or another, podcast came into sight, and then it was like, woo, the light went off. Did it go off for you the same way? You're like, oh my gosh, what could there's so much I could do with podcasts. And I absolutely, truly, truly love it. I think I love it more than I love my YouTube channel. Honestly.
Wow. That's interesting that you said that you love it more than that is, I just never thought podcasting would be the thing that would help me grow, and that has opened doors for me in terms of events I've been to. Like since I've been podcasting, I've gone to more dance events, whether they're performances or workshops or something else, more in the last couple years that I've been podcasting than ever first of all, before I couldn't afford it. So I couldn't pay for the tickets and all that. But being a podcaster, you're media and you're press. So I get access to things I would have never gotten access and to people, and then with podcasting, I love when I do interviews that I can bring out the best and bring out things in people and give them. I love encouraging people, because I think it's so important that people know how valuable they are. And I'm so about that message, because you're not here by accident. Your life is not an accident. No matter how you came to this earth, whether you were adopted or you don't have the best family, I'm so much about that. And having the podcast as a platform to promote people and your passion. And then meeting other podcasters. I love the podcasting community.
Oh my goodness. Me too. I feel, oh my gosh, you're like my spirit sister. Honestly. I just love it. We're so like kindred spirits. I just love it. I'm so excited to hear someone like you super excited about podcasts, because I could talk about it all day long. People, podcasts, and how many people really do listen to podcasts? I mean, there's a community of people that really love to listen to podcasts, but to be not only to listen to it, but to be a podcast host, because you're like after the same the same types of goals where you really want to just, highlight and feature and get to know your guests and bring out the best in them. And, I've always said that, for me at least, that the reason why I have my podcast is to enable others to tell a story where they would otherwise not have a voice. And if I could do that, if I could be that vessel for you to be able to tell your voice, then, I feel like I'm serving my purpose. So definitely, I'm so excited for your excitement. And I feel like, oh gosh, we have to meet now. Definitely.
Yes, we do. We do. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I love that we concur on that, because I've listened to, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've listened to podcasts, very popular podcasts, people that are very, I guess you would say they're celebrities in the online space. And I've met them in person and loved meeting them in person. They're kind and generous with their time and that kind of thing. I cannot listen to their podcast. You know why? Because they are always interrupting their guests, number one. Number two, the show is about them and not their guests. But the thing is, I met them in person and I love them in person. So it's just interesting that, yes, I think people can podcast, but I think especially with an interview show, I think it really is about the guests. And the synergy and the energy between the guests and the hosts. And I've been on shows too. I don't know if you've experienced this on podcast interviews where it wasn't about, not that it has to totally be about you, but it was about the host. It was all about the host. And so I'm like, okay, well, why are you interviewing me?
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I completely understand where you're coming from with that. But, I think that with you and I, we have a unique one. You have a very awesome niche in that, you're talking with dance entrepreneurs, or you're talking about that space of dance, and you're bringing that to the forefront. So I love that. And I think that this is definitely, you're bringing your strengths and you're bringing that to the platform. And it's allowing you to be able to talk with entrepreneurs and, see, what makes them tick, what makes them, how things work with them. And I love your niche. I love it so much that I was like, oh, you have to have her on my show.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Annie, so much. Thank you.
I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode. We'll be right back after this short message from one of our sponsors. Comfotherm thermal wraps are designed to help relieve the pain and swelling in and around the jaw, especially after wisdom teeth extractions. For more information, visit comfotherm.com. That's comfotherm.com. Hey there, Annie Rivera here. Thanks for tuning in to Annie Talks. Be sure to tell your friends about subscribing to the podcast, and don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Doing so helps out with the algorithm and helps others to find this podcast too. I also invite you to like my Annie Talks Facebook page. There you'll find other news, information, upcoming events, and all sorts of things. Stay in the know with Annie Talks. I also invite you to join the Annie Talks Community Facebook group, where we carry the conversation from the podcast episode to the Facebook group. Ask questions about the episode, about a guest, about the locations, you name it. Ask away. This forum is for you. See you on the Annie Talks Community Facebook group. So now, I was reading that you are a big believer that it's never too late to pursue your passions, whether it's dance or something else. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and what advice can you give some of our listeners?
Oh, yes. I love talking about this. I wholeheartedly believe that it's never too late, because I am one of many testimonies that it's never too late. As we've talked about, I returned to dance after a 20-year hiatus. I'm in my 40s now. I quit when I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. And I am stronger now in my 40s than I ever was in my 20s, which is just crazy to think about. And I feel like I'm just starting. I'm not the only example of that. I have had people on my podcast. I can name them. Marjorie Goodson recently, she's 55. She
Oh, wow.
and she is incredible. She has a dance book out that has her photographed, just a beautiful book of illustrations of her, not illustrations, they're photographs of her dancing. She's amazing. And then I had another woman named Nancy Alfaro, and she returned to her company that she used to dance with after leaving it for 20 years. Going back and we all have the same mindset, right? So it's really cool. If you look at the ballet dancers from Ballet Magnificat, which is I believe it's a Christian dance company, the women there are in their 50s and 60s dancing on point, doing complicated sequences. They're not holding back. They're doing, and it's crazy. And that's just a few of the examples. And it's not only in dance, it's other industries. And one saying that I say a lot that I still don't know who said it. I've looked it up. I can't find who the author is of this quote, but it's state of mind, not date of birth. Ooh. And I say that a lot because it totally is state of mind, not date of birth. When I'm in situations, when I'm in dance classes or anything, I really like in any kind of learning environment. Actually, no, everything actually. Because I think association is key for everything. Yeah. I like to be around people that challenge me. I like to be around people that are also thinking, okay, how can I do this? How can I approach this? Not, oh, I can't do that. I'm too old. My body's too weak. I've been in classes like that too, where, oh, well, my time has passed. I cannot be around that kind of mindset. I've worked so hard to overcome that, and I continue to overcome. Obviously, we never arrive, right?
Right.
But I like. We're
still going.
We're still going, and that's, I know, it's like. Before Annie, I used to think, oh my gosh, when am I going to get to the point where I actually feel like, not that I've arrived, but that I have a handle on things? That's never going to happen. And I'm finally okay with that because I think, how exciting is it that I'm going to continue learning as long as I continue to have the student mindset and continue working for myself to the best of what I know how, my abilities at the present moment. It's exciting because then there's always another level. And not that there's something wrong with you inside or that, oh my gosh, I always have to keep getting better to be a better person because you're already valuable as it is, right? But just that, wow, I can go to another level and learn and get new perspectives. I find that extremely exciting. That's why I say it's never too late because I've seen it time and time again. I've met these people. I know people personally now that it's so exciting for me. It's so inspiring for me and it keeps me going. So that's awesome. I think it's never too late.
For sure. And, lifelong learner, right? You're always going to be a lifelong learner. And, I'm a big proponent of that as well. And in always moving forward and never being stagnant. When I'm idle, oh God, I'm dangerous.
Me too.
God, I'm dangerous. It's like, oh, what could I get myself in trouble with? No, just kidding. So now tell us, when you're not dancing or talking or hosting your podcast, what do you do for fun? What does Annett do for fun? How do you unwind? How do you relax or for fun? What's adventurous for you?
Oh, adventurous. Well, I would say all those things: fun, relaxing, adventurous. I love yoga. I really love yoga.
Wow, yay.
I love yoga. I love going to coffee shops and not Starbucks. I mean, like, like the artisan, family-owned or artistic kind of coffee shops. I love discovering new vegan restaurants. I love vegan food.
Yay.
I love art events. I love artistic things and live music, and I love being outside. So those kind of things fuel me. I like experiences more so than things, if that makes sense. Before, when I was not dancing and involved in that business model, it was always about, gosh, when am I going to get that BMW? Am I ever going to get that purse? Or I'll feel important when I'm carrying that Bottega Veneta scarf, because that'll make me feel important. And it's so superficial for me. I mean, those things are great. If you like those things, fine. But and I'm not saying that I don't like quality, but that's not what I define myself with anymore. And in the pursuit of attaining those kind of things and thinking I wasn't enough, and it was very depressing. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm totally appreciating this moment I'm in. And it could be such a little thing. It could be so little, but so significant, if that makes sense.
Sure, of course it does. Now, I'm a huge fan of behind the scenes. I love to hear stories. I love it when people share their most memorable moments. So could you share one of your most memorable behind the scenes stories, either in your past dance experience or your most memorable podcast episode?
Oh, wow. There is one that is not that recent, but it was I think it's important just based on the context of our conversation about going back to dance, is that my first audition in over 20 years, my first dance audition that I went to a couple years ago in over 20 years, I quit dance partly because of the audition process before, because I couldn't handle the rejection. I couldn't handle that I wasn't looking like this girl. I wasn't dancing like this person. I don't have this look like this girl, and woe is me because they didn't pick me. And so I cried for days, and I thought, this is not for me. I don't like being rejected. So my first audition back, I thought, okay, my goal when I went back to dance, I don't want to perform. I don't want to audition. And then that changed. As soon as I got back, I thought, I'm pushing myself. I'm getting uncomfortable. Let's make myself more uncomfortable. Let me go back to this audition. So I went to this audition for this contemporary dance company, and all the dancers were better than me. But the thing is, Annie, I felt great. I wasn't nervous. Could I have done better? Of course I could have done better. Mm-hmm. I messed up. Even the improv, I thought, oh, that wasn't good. But it was the first audition ever that I felt, you know what, no matter what happens, I can say that I showed up. I put myself out there. These girls are probably young enough to be let's just say they're young enough to be my nieces. I'll say I'm their older aunt. I thought, yeah. And I thought, yeah. So I thought I can keep up with these girls. Mm-hmm. I may not be as technically proficient because they've been doing it longer. I've taken a 20-year break, but I feel great. And even when, she told me that I didn't get picked, I thought, that's okay. And that was such a huge breakthrough for me, because I thought I'm not dependent on what an audition process, what happened, whether I got chosen or not. That's not going to stop me from improving myself or being in that student mindset and going to another one and another one. Right. Not that I'm trying to make this professional dance career happen like I did before. It's a different experience for me now, and I do things because I want a different perspective and a different experience. So that's one memory I would say that's fairly recent that is, I'll always remember going back to that and the feelings I got of, wow, it's okay, and I can do this, and I can put myself out there regardless of what people say, don't say, pick me, not pick me, if I look like her, whatever. And that was a huge breakthrough for me.
Oh, that's so awesome. That it's awesome that you were in that space to be able to just say, to yourself, hey, that's okay. Because believe me, I know the auditioning is like the worst. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness. So now if, this is another question. It's kind of digging deep in and asking a vulnerable question. So what is one thing about you that people don't already know?
Oh, wow. One thing people don't know is I used to hide in the bathroom during it's called CCD. If you're Catholic, you know what that is.
Oh my God, yes.
So during CCD class in elementary school at St. Elizabeth Church in Aiea, Hawaii, my dad would drop me off, and I wouldn't go to class. I would wait for him to drive off, and then I'd go hide in the bathroom because I was so self-conscious. And so when people would come in, I think it was an hour. So I'd hide in the bathroom for an hour. If people would come in, I'd stand on the toilet so they wouldn't see my feet, that someone was in there. And I'd try to be as quiet as possible because I was so self-conscious and so embarrassed. So even being in class, because I remember going to the first CCD class when I got registered, and I was just so shy and self-conscious, and like the teacher would call on me, and I still feel like right now as I'm talking to you, I could feel my body cringe and like I'm going internally, like I'm curling up sort of, because I remember how it felt, and I don't know what it was. It wasn't like she was calling me out for something. I was just that kind of child, and just, the upbringing and things that were said to me. So yes, that's one thing people don't know, is that I used to hide in the bathroom during CCD class at St. Elizabeth Church in Aiea, Hawaii.
And who knew? Because you're so outgoing. You have this exuberant personality. It's funny how our past doesn't really dictate who or what our future is going to be, because you're not nearly the shy person that you were way back then. So thank goodness.
But it's funny, Annie, because I would consider myself, the whole, I hate labels too, but the whole thing with the introvert, I would say I'm more on that side though, because I do like my quiet time. I like doing things alone. I don't mind going to a restaurant and eating by myself. I'm not self-conscious about that at all. I don't care what you think if I'm alone, or I can go to the movies by myself. I'm comfortable being alone, and I relish that time, and I'm not one of those like, oh, I have to have people around me, and I have to have people come with me places. I'm perfectly fine, and that part of me I've always hung on to.
Well, I think it's because you have a really good balance. So you have a good balance between the introvert and the extroverted side. So I completely resonate with that. So nothing wrong with that. So now, here's the golden question of the episode. If you could do anything differently, what would you tell your 21-year-old self about what you know now?
I would tell my 21-year-old self that you are valuable and you have purpose. You already have everything within to accomplish your goals and dreams. And it is important that you honor yourself and appreciate the moments in your journey.
Ooh, I love that. That's so nice. Good. You know what? Your 21-year-old self is thanking you. So yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yay. Now, what parting words of wisdom can you share with our listeners? So people that are maybe struggling, with jumping in with both feet and taking the leap of faith, or struggling with depression or weight loss. What any words of wisdom to any group of people would you like to say?
Wow, there's so much we can say about that. But I would say a couple things I would say. I would say if you want to go back to something you're passionate about, or start anything that you're curious about and want to pursue, I would say don't wait for conditions to be perfect, because it's not going to be perfect. And you need to start somewhere with something, anything. I'm a big believer that you do what you can with what you have. That's definitely been my experience is, okay, I can't, for example, when I started dance with the jazz and ballet classes at 14, my family did not have the money for dance classes. So what did I do? I worked at the studio in exchange for dance. I cleaned the studio. I did registrations. I did whatever I could.
Good for you.
I wanted to dance. So you do what you can with what you have.
Awesome.
And I would also say to value the process and growth that comes along with pursuing something, and that you need to have a marathon mindset. It's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
Yeah. So I would say that. And then the last thing I would say is that, based on also what your question was about the 21-year-old self, that goes along those lines, is that you are valuable, your dreams are important, and it's never too late to be great.
Oh my goodness. Such wonderful, strong words of encouragement. So I thank you so much. This is for me mostly, and then and for those who are listening as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, Annett, where can we follow you? Where can we follow you on social media?
Well, you can always go to my site, AnnettBone.com, ANNETTBONE.com. There's no E at the end of my name, so it's double N, double T. I am on Instagram and Twitter at Annett Bone. And on Instagram particularly, I share a lot of my journey of starting back to dance. So you'll see me looking very different 4 years ago than I do now. And my Instagram is very much about encouraging and inspiring people to start with what they have, where they're at, go back to what you love, start something that you're curious about, and that you can do it. It's totally about the message that you can totally do it, no matter what is going on in your life.
Awesome. And then what's the name of give a plug of your podcast?
My podcast is the Dancepreneuring Studio, where dance inspires life and business. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and all the podcast directories.
Awesome. And I will have all of her social media and her podcast link in the show notes below. So everybody go check her out. Annett, I've enjoyed this conversation so immensely. You have no idea. And just to know that we're so like-minded and that we share kind of the same challenges and thought processes, and in, knowing where we want to go going forward. We're so kindred in that spirit. So I'm so thankful for you agreeing to being on the show and just learning so much about you.
Thank you so much for that, Annie. I really appreciate your kind words and your enthusiasm and us connecting. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Annie Talks and learning about Annett Bone, the creator and host of the Dancepreneuring Studio podcast, where dance inspires life and business. I love what Annett said about how it's never too late to do what you want. You can totally do it no matter what's going on in your life. I love that. Be sure to check out Annett's website and follow her on social media. I will have all that information in the show notes below, so be sure to check them out. Also, you can listen to her on the Dancepreneuring Studio podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Podcasts, and other podcast directories. Now, before we sign off, if you aren't already subscribed to my podcast, I invite you to hit subscribe and be notified anytime we upload a new episode. If you are already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you could just please rate and review my podcast, please leave a comment or two. It would really help me out, and it would also help others to find this podcast. You can follow me on all my social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. I will also have the link to all my social media below in the show notes. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider contributing to my Patreon page. Your contributions will help to further the vision and mission of Annie Talks so that we could produce more episodes like this one and many other types of episodes and topics. The Patreon page will also be included in the show notes below. Thank you all again for tuning in, and keep listening to Annie Talks.
Hi there, this is Annett Bone from the Dancepreneuring Studio podcast, where dance inspires life and business. You are listening to the amazing Annie Rivera from Annie Talks.